All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back indeed. We are back from traveling, so no video yesterday, but back today. We got an 8-game NBA slate to dive into in today's video. Like we always do, I'm going to dive into each and every one of these games. I'll give you my prediction on the side. I'll give you my prediction on the total. We'll talk about any other plays like player props that we like within the game as well. But as always, guys, keep an eye down on the pinned comment of this video. That'll take you to all of my final plays, so that I'm actually rolling with myself. And yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it, guys. Happy New Year. First day and first video of 2025. Had an amazing 2024. Hopefully you guys can look back and reflect on some of the great things that happened in that year. For me personally, business-wise, Guy Boston sports-wise, we went full-time doing this damn thing in 2024. So I'm super, super appreciative of that. And I want to carry that fire and that momentum into 2025. So I'm very, very excited. Happy New Year to everyone out there. Hopefully you guys all had a really good time and good celebration no matter what you did. But what do you say we dive into this video? First, how about the ride of the day? Let's go ahead and jump back on the train. Guys, if you don't know what the ride of the day is, it's simple. Just use that hashtag in the comments. I jump on board with one person's play each and every day. Give you a shout out in the next video, win or loss. Also shout you out on the Guy Boston Sports site by the final plays, as well as on my Twitter/X, which will be popping up here throughout the show. But drop those hashtag ride of the days in there. And yeah, let's go ahead and dive into the slate. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I want you to absolutely smash that like button to celebrate the new year. Go ahead and crush it. Let's dive into it. We got game number 1 here. Our arrow is all messed up. And there we go. Detroit taking on Orlando in this one. Right now, Orlando on the road, 1.5-point dogs. The total sitting at 213. I've seen some 213.5s out there. I'll start with the total because I don't really love, you know, either the over or under in this one. I would end up leaning towards the under, just due to the fact that Orlando does have the defensive edge here, and they play at such a slow pace. Over the last 10 games, the 29th pace, this season's second fewest points per game allowed, third best defensive efficiency out there, and Detroit's going to want to shoot a decent amount of shots from 3. Over the last 10 games here, the 6th most threes from above the break taken per game from a frequency rate are the Detroit Pistons, right? Orlando this season, number 1 in terms of points allowed from 3. So I do like defense in this game. The one thing I will say is if Detroit controls the pace and Detroit gets going, they are a top 10 pace team over the last 10 games. They can definitely flip the switch here and flip the script, I guess. So it's not something I love, but I guess I would lean towards the under solely because, without spoiling it too much, I guess, I like Orlando in this spot as well. Now, yes, they're super banged up. Obviously, we know about the Banchero and Wagner injuries, and then even Mo Wagner, right? Black and Suggs also listed as game-time decisions, so we want to keep an eye on them. Cade Cunningham on the other side of things listed as probable, so he's most likely playing. But overall, I just kind of mentioned why I don't mind the look at Orlando here. If this is a low-scoring game, which I can kind of see it being, right? This is a spot in which Detroit may not have the best time scoring. So Detroit, like I said, has been shooting a lot more threes. On the season, they've elected to take plenty of shots in the paint, but both of those spots, you know, in the paint and, you know, at the rim and in the paint, and also from 3, Orlando's a very good defensive team, regardless of their injuries. So I don't think Detroit's the best, you know, offense to say, hey, just because you're a good defense doesn't mean you can't score. It's like, no. Detroit's the type of team that falls victim to good defenses offensively. So yeah, I'm going to lean towards Orlando in this spot. Even look at what they've done so far against each other this year. Now, this is November 23rd. Orlando won 111-100. That was a game in which they did have Franz Wagner. I think he dropped like 30 plus on them. So that's obviously a little bit different. And I don't think Cade Cunningham, if I'm not mistaken, played for Detroit. So very, very, very different. But we did see Orlando cover a big number and also keep the game under. I see this somewhat going similar to that. Now, in terms of player props, I have a couple ones. Now, this is where it gets a little dicey because I like 2 guys that it's not like they're guaranteed the volume. So first up is going to be Tristan da Silva. I like his over in points, and I also don't mind his over 1.5 3-pointers made. This is a Detroit defense that definitely can struggle at the perimeter, and I'm starting to target some of these guys that do like to shoot shots at the perimeter for the Magic team. Now you have, no Wagner, and I guess you could look at the obvious ones like Jalen Suggs or something like that, but when you look at guys that do take 3-point shots for this Orlando team, you go a little bit further down the list, you're looking at, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Tristan Da Silva, and those are the two guys here. So I talked about Da Silva. I also wouldn't mind taking a peek at Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I also like Pope's over in assists. He's hit that in 64% of games so far this season. You look at head-to-head, he's had it in 2 of the 3. So yeah, decent spot here to potentially target Pope for his points/threes. Also his assists if you want to get outside of scoring, and then Tristan Da Silva for his points/threes, because I think those guys could do some damage on the perimeter, especially if it's like a drive and kick situation and they're just sitting in the corner. All right, next up, this is an interesting one. We got Washington taking on Chicago. Washington at 5.5-point dogs, which I'm almost surprised it's not as it's not a higher number, I guess you could say. The total sitting at 238. In terms of where I'd go with the spread, I do think Chicago is most likely the play here, but like I just mentioned, it's kind of a weird number right now. If we look at injuries and what we have to keep an eye on for Chicago, yeah, no Levine, right? You have Dosunmu listed as out as well. On the Washington side of things, Jordan Poole listed as questionable, Carrington listed as questionable, Marvin Bagley out, Bay out. We've known those injuries for a while. So kind of sitting here questioning why this line is what it is, which may be the reason we end up staying away in a sense. I feel like this line should be obviously, a little bit more favorable towards the Chicago Bulls here, like maybe 7.5, something like that. But overall, it's at 5.5. Yes, we do have Washington, who has had a really, really bad year. They have covered. I would give them a little bit of credit in 3 of their last 4 home games, but 2 of those were against Charlotte. 1 was against New York, in which they did get beat by, I think it was 13 points, but the line was 4. They got beat by 12 points. The line was 13, if I have my numbers correctly. So it's like, okay, yeah, it doesn't really matter, right? But overall here, again, leaning towards Chicago for a couple reasons. Chicago's going to shoot a bunch of threes. We know that, and they're going to play at a fast pace. Washington, the only thing that I could say about them potentially keeping up with teams, or not keeping up, but making them keep up with them and playing at a fast pace, is kind of something that they can make games stay close. Like if they're playing a really good but really slow-paced team, if Washington gets running, they're not the most efficient team on either side, but they can run. That can make it tough for another team to keep up with them. Chicago is a faster paced team than Washington. So there's no real angle I can get to unless I'm missing something here to get to Washington. So give me Chicago. I like them be able to score from outside, and then if they need to score from inside, they can as well. So before we get to the total, we'll talk a little player prop here, because I do think that screams, being able to look at if Levine plays. I don't mind Levine, but even if he doesn't, I'm going to look at Big Vooch. I think Nikola Vucevic could have a very, very good game here. If you look at his points, it's at 21.5. Yeah, that thing's creeping up from when we were in the days of taking it, at 16.5. So maybe we elect to look at his threes, because the dude has just been cashing threes over and over again. 69% of his games so far this season, he has hit 2 or more threes in. You look at it on the road, 71% of his games. He only has 5 games this season on the road in which he has not hit his threes. So yeah, I don't mind Vooch to get a few of these looks, but yeah, I don't mind his, points plus rebounds and stuff like that too. I think that he could have a pretty favorable game, just due to the fact that Washington isn't good defensively, and they struggle outside mightily, but they also struggle defending the inside, and I can't picture a better guy in the Bulls to say, okay, well, who's going to try and take a couple threes? Like, Vooch will take 5 to 6 threes, right? And then who can also bruise it down low? That's him. So yeah, I like Vooch. And then we get to the total. I left it for last because it's not exactly my favorite spot. You do have 2 very fast-paced teams. I like the over here, but it's going to have to take Levine playing, Jordan Poole playing, that type of thing. Like, it's not exactly a spot in which I'm sitting here being like, I'm chomping at the bit to try and say 2 teams that aren't the most efficient offenses. The Bulls are better than Washington, but aren't the most efficient offenses. I want to jump and have them, go out there and score 240. The reason you'd be taking the over in this one at all is most likely because of the pace and the defensive efficiency, which to some degree can be correlated. So I guess I would say more so the defensive efficiency for sure. All right, guys, before we keep going with the slate here, I want to talk to you about Sleeper. Go ahead and check it out. If you have not tried Sleeper Picks yet, you are absolutely missing out. Play $5, get 55 back. It's an absolute steal of a deal. We just rhymed there. And you get this Jokic freebie, 0.5 points for tonight as a new user. If you guys don't know what Sleeper is, it's simple. Just use the link down in the pinned comment or the description. Sign up. You pick higher or lower on player set projections. You put them into an entry. The more you win, the more you get paid out. Speaking of payout, each and every play on Sleeper changes the payout dynamically. So if you put a player in there, they have their own multiplier that will affect your entire slip. It's really, really cool and unique. So go ahead and check it out, guys. That link will be down below and in the description and pinned comment, wherever it's easiest for you to find. Go check out Sleeper Picks. If you haven't signed up yet, you seriously are missing out. It's available in your state and you're not in there, you are missing out and you will not regret it signing up. So go check out Sleeper, guys. Again, that link will be down below. Now let's jump back into these games. All right, Miami taking on the Pelicans here. This Miami team laying 8.5 points, which is definitely a big number for them. You look at it on the season, if this were to be their line, so -8.5 in all their games, they would have covered in just 30% of those games. So yeah, kind of a tough spot to look at home. A little bit better, like they've looked better against spread at home here. 50% of their games at home this year, they would have covered this -8.5. So I am kind of taking that and running with it. They've also covered, again, using this line in their other games in, I think it's 6 of their last 7, which is really good. You look at the Pelicans, they've actually started to cover some games. 3 of their last 4 games they've covered, but still on the season, a very, very bad ATS team at 36% of their games. So I'm going to lean Miami. It's a huge number. I get it if someone's like, yeah, it's a little bit big for me to take. Pause. But I just can't see any reason why we'd like the Pelicans. I mean, the one thing you could sit here and be like, well, yeah, they might be a little bit more of an efficient team when scoring in the paint or electing to score in the paint, but Miami's not the worst team at defending the paint. And Miami's going to be able to shoot from 3, and the Pelicans cannot stop a nosebleed from the 3-point line. So this is going to be another spot in which we probably end up saying, okay, well, we like Miami, but the reason we like Miami has to do with how they might score, right? And we're looking at some different spots on the floor, like the above the break 3 and whatnot. So maybe this is a spot in which we look at, Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson again. Terry Rozier is out, and they had that skirmish, right, with the Rockets. So he is, I think is it just 1 game suspension, maybe? But Tyler Hero, not suspended, and Duncan Robinson game time decision. So maybe we can mix them in some sort of a same game parlay with their 3-pointers so that we can target the weakness of the Pelicans, which would be attacking that perimeter. I will say the Pelicans also don't really defend the paint all that well, so maybe you could just target someone like Hero that's going to shoot a bunch of shots because he'll shoot from 3, he'll shoot inside, and look at that from a points perspective. But overall, yeah, I don't really get a great angle here. I can't kind of figure it out to get to the Pelicans. And then at the same time, I mean, the total is at 221, right? The Pelicans are the 8th fastest team in terms of pace over the last 10 games. Miami the 5th slowest. So why is this total down there if we have a top 10 pace team playing if, the books think that Pelicans are going to contribute? I don't think so. So I think it's a good spot for Miami, but 8 is definitely a lot. I also mentioned, the total at 221 being low. I think that I would probably look at a Pelicans team total under before taking the full game under, because this Miami team should be able to score at will, whether it's at the paint or, from 3. So yeah, maybe a Pelicans team total under is the easiest way to kind of like solve the equation we have here and take out all the variables. So maybe that's what we look at. Keep an eye on the final plays. All right, Knicks taking on Utah. I got a weird way of looking at this one. It's not exactly... Okay, so I'm trying to find a way to almost back Utah without backing Utah. I know it's crazy and sounds weird, so I think the way that I do that is potentially start to look at maybe a Knicks team total over, because this Utah team can cover games. I mean, in their last 10 games here on the road, if they had a 13-point buffer, they would have covered in 70% of their games, and they've covered in 6 straight if they had a 13-point line here as well. Against the spread on the road this year, just in general, almost a 60% cover rate, and they've been playing like no defense, right? So it's like, that's why I'm trying to give Utah somewhat credit without having to back them. So maybe a New York Knicks team total play is, in play here. You do have Utah, obviously, I guess in general having a bad year, but, they've looked okay. Like they're playing better basketball as of late, winning games outright, definitely covering. Like they've covered in I want to say it's 3 or 4 straight games. So yeah, it's kind of a weird spot here for me to sit there and be like, okay, well, is this Utah team really that fadeable? And I don't think that's an answer of an easy yes. So maybe that's the credit I give them, and now I look at like a Knicks team total over, because now the one thing I will say, I'm glazing the Utah Jazz. They do stink, and the Knicks are a good team. And if we just say, okay, the Knicks go out there and score, 120, which seems like it is a lot, but against a Jazz team that plays zero defense, maybe that's the move. So I think that that's something that I would consider, or just a potential, kind of nod to the Jazz saying, hey, I'll take the over in this game overall, right? You look at both of these two teams to this line over the last few games here. In the last 7, both teams 5-2 to the over. So yeah, again, it's a weird spot because I'm trying to give the Jazz credit to somewhat keep this game close or score points or play, whatever good basketball without actually directly doing that. Like, it's not black and white. I'm looking for a gray area. Maybe the over in this spot is that type of thing. Now, Collins and Brunson listed as game time decisions. Especially for the Knicks, that's obviously a big point score, but I do think Bridges and Towns can kind of pick up where that slack is left off. So, yeah, I like the over in this one, and maybe a Knicks team total over, but I'm not sitting here telling you that the Jazz won't be able to score points, you know what I mean? Like, they were able to score, 121, 111, 120, 113 in their last few games. Like, they can make up for, almost half of this line. Now, from a player prop perspective, I'd obviously want to wait out to see if, Brunson's playing specifically, but I do think there's a couple scorers that we could probably target here on the Knicks. Like, this Jazz team does not prevent points in the paint all that well. That's going to scream Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns. It also gives a little bit of a nod to Josh Hart. I like the idea of Josh Hart being able to get some rebounds and put them back in type of thing. So maybe a Josh Hart peak, and it's a peak because, again, he's not always involved in the offense and whatnot, but a Josh Hart, let's see what his updated line is here. So Josh Hart for his points plus rebounds, right? 22.5 for plus money. I don't mind it. He's averaging over the last 10 games 16.6 rebound chances per game, and he's shooting the ball 10 times per game. So that could definitely be a look here, especially if he's going to get, I would say some Laurie marketing treatment. It's like he's not going to be the biggest of rebounders down there. So maybe Josh Hart could be a kind of sneaky look here in this spot. All right, Toronto taking on Brooklyn. I'll jump right out ahead of this one saying, this one, you can make an argument for both sides. I think I'm going to be on the Brooklyn side here, though, for a few different reasons. We've seen this matchup recently, and you had Toronto who were favored. Now, it was in Toronto as well, if I'm not mistaken. You had Toronto, they were favored, and then they end up losing by, 7 points. So, Brooklyn wins as wins outright as the dog. This Brooklyn team overall hasn't been playing the best basketball, but you can argue Toronto's been playing worse basketball just in terms of against this number 2. So yeah, I don't necessarily sit here and say that, that's an easy pick for Brooklyn, but to me, they are the way better defensive team. And I think that's the only, glimmer or glimpse of like, oh, that could be a benefit. Brooklyn's also covered in nearly 71% of their road games this season. I say that with also being able to say, well, Toronto is covered in 67% or 68% of their home games this year. So obviously that is a massive factor. I don't want to just like kind of overlook that. In terms of the situation, you have both teams in here. Toronto, I guess I already mentioned that, has really not been covering games, but over the last 10 games, if they were, underdogs by 1 point or less, 1-9 against that number, and they played yesterday, right? So it's like there's a lot of factors here that are just sitting in saying, okay, well, Brooklyn might be the look. But if you're on Toronto for whatever reason and whatnot today, I really don't mean to take this time to try and talk you off it. This line has bounced around multiple times. We do still have some injuries that we're waiting on, Barrett and Dick on the Toronto side of things, and then I think Williams, Zaire Williams might be good to go for Brooklyn, but not that that's going to matter all that much. So overall, Brooklyn or nothing for me in this spot. We have the total sitting at 221. I don't mind an under. Like I said, these two teams did play, and it was a low-scoring game, and I don't think that, Toronto's pace is going to benefit them here. This is a team in which, even when they do play fast pace, sometimes they have terrible efficiency in the fast break and in transition. So yeah, I'm going to lean towards an under 221 here as well. And in terms of player props, I struggled to find any. So if we add any player props, I'll put them in the final plays. And if I do, and we didn't talk about them on the video, obviously, I'll add a little blurb as to why I like them over on the Guy Boston Sports site. Hey guys, speaking of the Guy Boston Sports site, we have our end of year sale for the merch here. GuyBostonSports.com/store or FadeMe.store. Everything is discounted with just a few of the new products are excluded from the sale, but an end of year sale. Today is the last day. We extended it for just New Year's Day. We had it through New Year's Eve, extended it to New Year's Day. So go ahead and check it out. I'll put some products on the YouTube merch bar as well, so you can just click easily from there. They'll either be linked right below the video or probably in like the corner of your screen here. And if you like those products, click them. It'll take you right to the store. So go ahead and check it out again. Everything is discounted. This is legitimate merch, some amazing quality. So go ahead and check that out. GuyBostonSports.com/store. GuyBostonSports.com/store. You got it. GuyBostonSports.com/store. All right, Houston hosting Dallas here. Houston 5.5-point favorites, which shouldn't be surprising once we talk about the injuries. Total sitting at 222. So Luka Doncic listed as out here. Obviously, no Marshall either. Dante Exum also listed as out. Derek Lively listed as a game time decision. So I think that's worth keeping an eye on. And then Amen Thompson also listed it out. We have a lot of guys that have gotten in some scuffles and brawls lately that are in this game, kind of respectively, right? And Thompson, Marshall, so interesting to see there. Easton's also listed as a game time decision for Houston. Now, Luka being obviously the big injury, it makes a whole lot of sense why they would be dogs in this game. I do think that this can be somewhat close of a game, but overall, I don't know how trustworthy this Mavs team is or can be without Luka, especially late in games. So I do think that this is a close game, but Houston probably ultimately ends up pulling it out. But I'm going to look at an under here as well. So, yeah, I do say Houston, but that's kind of the lean, right? I think if I actually really do want to roll with something in this game, it's a slight look at an under or potentially even a Dallas team total under because, again, Dallas could keep this game close. I do think Houston's defense will kind of shine through. In terms of where I'd go from a player prop perspective, though, it does switch up a little bit. This is a Dallas team that covers the perimeter really well. We've seen that all year long, and I give them credit for that. They have struggled to prevent points in the paint. That screams Alfie Sengun. Obviously, if you do want to look at some player props there, especially if Derek Lively is going to be injured, maybe that's a spot. Another sort of pivot there could be looking at the other big guy down there. I don't mind like a potential look at Jabari Smith. So in terms of the lines we have for both of those guys, let me pull them up. Alperen Sengun here, his points obviously going to be very high. 20.5, yeah. Last few times he's played Dallas has looked okay. So in his last three, he's averaging 23.3 against them. In terms of Jabari Smith, this is where I do think that there could be kind of a diamond in the rough spot because this line's not going to be all that high. 11.5 here. Last few times he's played Dallas, he's hitting 5 straight games, averaging 18.2 points per game. So yeah, that could be a good spot for him as well. I just want him to have the field goal attempts. So this season, he's only averaging around 9 field goal attempts. In those games against Dallas, he's averaging 12. That can make a huge difference. So Jabari Smith could be a look here. I would probably say the total at under 222 is tied with the player props. Then I'd look at the Dallas team total under, and then I'd consider Houston minus the 5.5. Because that minus 5.5, I could see Dallas keeping this game close because they do have obviously some great players outside of Luka, but I don't know if they have the closing sort of skill without him. So that's why that's down at the bottom for me. All right, Denver taking on Atlanta. This should be a good one if we do see some guys play. Trae Young listed as a game time decision, and then you have Dyson Daniels also listed as a game time decision, and Bogdanovich listed as doubtful. So there's a ton of injuries on Atlanta's side of things that I do think matter. Larry Nance Jr. is out if you want to consider that a piece as well. Zeller out if you want to go even further and consider that a piece. On the Denver side of things, no Aaron Gordon. I think I'm going to look at the underdog here in Atlanta. A few different reasons. Both of these teams elect to shoot from the paint a ton and have been scoring in the paint a ton. Atlanta, on one hand, though, has been a little bit better defensively at preventing those points in the paint or at the rim and that type of thing, whereas Denver, bottom 5 team so far this year in terms of points in the paint allowed. Last 3 games, second to last, and they haven't been all that great from defending the 3 either, so you could be like, well, you know, Atlanta's so bad defensively from 3, maybe that's where Denver capitalizes. Denver's only the 6th worst team compared to the worst team in Atlanta from defending the 3. So if both teams do struggle defensively from 3, okay, I'll call that a wash. If both teams are really good at scoring in the paint, then we look at, okay, well, who can defend the paint better? And that is Atlanta. And Atlanta can run. This Denver team is the 6th fastest paced team over the last 10 games. Atlanta, the 2nd fastest paced team. Now, the one thing I will say is Denver's definitely a more efficient offense than Atlanta, but Atlanta's a better and more efficient defense. So, again, there's a lot of washes here that kind of cancel each other out, except for that defending the points in the paint to me. So, I'll take that 5.5 points in my pocket. One, I guess, scary-ish thing. Now, there's a decent amount of injuries in this one, but Denver beat Atlanta by like 30 points last time they played. That was at the beginning of December, right? Hopefully that's not the case again. And all of what I'm saying, other than the player prop, that'll be injury independent. But all of what I'm saying does depend on, Trae Young and Dyson Daniels, two massive pieces. One of the best on-ball defenders in Daniels, questionable here. And then Trae Young, obviously, one of the most important players on the Sox team. So we'll keep that in mind. Player prop-wise, though, before we get to, I guess we can start with the total. I don't really want to touch anything here because, again, both teams could, run and play fast-paced and shoot a bunch of threes. Yes, that leads to an over. But do I really want to look at like a need of 250 near 250? Like, that seems really, really high, right? So yeah, I'll lean over just because of the pace and the lack of defense, but I don't think that I roll with that. So get that out of the way. One player prop that I really am considering is going to be Jalen Johnson here, over 19.5 points. This dude on the season, 10 of his 14 road games this year, he's hit the over in, and this is a Denver team that one can run and again allows points in the paint. That is a wet dream for my man Jalen Johnson here. So I like him to score 20 tonight. Last time he played Denver, he had 17 points. That was last season, though. He played 33 minutes, shot the ball 18 times, 44%, right? On the season so far this year, he's playing more minutes than that, nearly 37 minutes. He's shooting the ball more than that as well, and his field goal percentage is up to 51%. So even if he just has the same amount of shots and just shoots a better percentage this time than he did last time, he would have hit the over. So I like Jalen Johnson's points in this one. All right, Sacramento taking on Philadelphia. Before we dive into it, the DNB graveyard is going to look pretty damn different soon because we have the Kings, who are now potentially ready to be revived on 1/1/2025, which is today. And same thing with Sabonis. Both of these guys shared a potential revival date, the team and the guy, of 1/1, so the New Year's Day. And they're playing today. If you guys don't know what the DNB graveyard is, if players or teams or specific plays have just absolutely wronged us, they go into the graveyard. Depending on how severe they wronged us, we give them a potential revival date. At that revival date, a hand comes up from the underground, and we need to see something that proves to us that we can rely on them in the future. So both these guys are on the watch now. Kings, whether it's team total, money line, spread, as well as Domas Sabonis, are now going to be on the watch to potentially being spots in which we can actually lock in here. So yeah, definitely good. And I always talk about it, guys. I understand that you shouldn't be like, that shouldn't impact your next player, next bet. It's like, we're having fun here, all right? Have a good time. But Sacramento here, 6.5 point favorites over this Sixers team. You look at the injury report, and we obviously can note that Embiid is out, Martin's out, McCain is still out here, Drummond game time decision, Lowry game time decision, Eric Gordon game time decision. Keegan Murray listed as doubtful for Sacramento, though, so that's obviously a decently big loss for them. But Sacramento, I do think at home, and with the, obviously now the coaching change and whatnot, I do think that this is a team that's maybe starting to play or going to start play better basketball, but so have the Sixers, right? Like, the Sixers team over their last few games here now, albeit they've played somewhat of some cupcake teams, but Portland, Utah, San Antonio's in there, but Boston and Cleveland, like they've played some tough basketball lately. I just think Sacramento sitting here at home, they just beat Dallas by, what was it, 10 or 11. They're more healthy than Philadelphia. I think it's a spot for them, but I can get someone being like, yeah, I think Philadelphia I think you get plus money right now too for the plus 6.5. I totally understand that. I just don't necessarily see why or where the good spot there would be. This is a Philadelphia team that does like to shoot in the paint more than they do like to chuck the threes. Now that's with Embiid playing. Embiid's not playing, so things can definitely change, but Sacramento, I've been saying it all year long. Yes, they've burned the crap out of us this season, but I've always given them the credit. They're actually a very good team at defending the paint and defending points in the paint. Third fewest so far this season. So for that reason, I'll be on Sacramento minus the 6 points tonight. In terms of what we have from a total, if I think Sacramento kind of takes away how Philly will score, I think Sacramento, I've said Sacramento so many times here, I think the Kings should be able to also somewhat be able to score from the mid-range and whatnot on Philadelphia. So I do think that this is maybe one of those where I look at like a Philly team total under, but a Sacramento team total over. I don't know if they both lead to an over or both lead to an under. So I'm gonna do what I like to do sometimes, and yeah, flip it, right? Like just split it in two. Sacramento team total over, Philly team total under. Now, when we look at it from a player prop perspective, I just kind of tipped my hand, right? Who do I like? Well, it's gonna be DeMar DeRozan. I think that he could have a lot of success from the mid range here. If he wants to get into the paint and whatnot, that'll be a decent spot for him as well. So he's gonna be probably top 5 in terms of points in the paint for this Sacramento team, but he leads the team in mid-range attempts per game. And right now, let's see, I don't have an updated line on him, so let's see if we can find that really quickly. DeMar DeRozan, his points line here, sitting at 19.5, 4+ money. Yeah, I don't mind that. He's averaged 18.3 over his last 3 games against this Philly team, but those are all with Chicago, so could be a little bit different here. I don't mind him. It's a high-ish number, but he's hit it in 57% of games this year, only in 31% of home games. Now that's a little bit interesting. I'll stick to it, but just keep an eye on the final plays to make sure that one is locked in if we do end up rolling with it. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's show. Comment 29 if you made it this far. Do truly appreciate it. We got our road videos out. For the most days, we only missed the travel days. So hopefully you guys do understand that obviously when we travel, if we can get a video out, we will. Like I want to. I love this. I love doing it. We've worked our asses off to get to where we are. It's not like I'm just going to kick back and enjoy vacation. I wish I could do that, but this brain doesn't even work like that. You know what I mean? So people being like, where's the video and stuff? It's like I always up to you guys on the community page and in the Discord saying like, oh, no video today because I'm traveling. So FYI, you can look there, but just know I'm so happy to be back and get rolling here, and I'm very, very excited for 2025. I know that was a little rant, but go ahead and comment 29 if you made it this far, and catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace out.